Hello.
Hello.
Hey, this is great. Look at you just having a ram in the bush. Hold on a second. So I'm going to tell people to. I'm trying to see how do I share your. Oh, hold on.
Oh, so Evans, Truth, Sheffield. There's people joining.
Okay, so I'm going to send people to your page
Okay.
so they can come in.
Turn your phone, cuz.
Me?
No, that's what Truth just told
Thank you, Drew. Ah!
me. I'm straight Truth. I don't know nothing about this.
Oh, wait, it has us sideways.
Yeah, I think you gotta turn your phone too.
Oh, okay. Why he ain't tell me to turn my phone? There it is. All right, there we go. Oh, wait, I'm still sideways.
You don't look sideways on my phone.
All right, well, we're going to get started. So, thank you, Victorious, for joining me,
No
and
problem.
thank you to your friends for watching. So, hopefully, people will come in. I just wanted to start off by just again thanking you. I want to introduce you to everyone who doesn't know you. Thank you for everyone for joining in. I'm Dr. Tara, and this is the first episode or installment of Dr. Tara Tuesdays. I'm so excited to have Victorious Hall, otherwise known as Brother Victorious or Vic, um, on here. He is a vice principal, he's an activist, he's a husband, he's a father. And for the month of June, we are celebrating and talking to fathers, men, because I think a lot of times when the conversation comes around to parenting or emotional health or wellness, a lot of times men are left out of that conversation. However, we know that, self-care, healthy relationships are not just specific to women, and so I wanted to have this conversation just because in my experience in working with parents and being a parent, the topic of dads and discipline comes up a lot. And
Yeah.
so, I wanted, and I know that you and I have had many, many conversations about it, just in relation to one, how your own upbringing, and then two, how you are raising your son, and talk about, ways that or things that you've learned to unlearn and things that you've had to relearn as it relates to your own fatherhood journey. So if you want to just give a little bit of background about you, and how this whole dads and discipline thing works out for you, or what did you think about, what comes to mind when you think about Black fathers and discipline or the Black family? What images come to mind for you, and how did you decide what your discipline practices will be?
Well, that's funny. I think my discipline practices are always evolving, right? Like the more I learn, the more I'm able to figure out how best to bring certain consequences to my in my home and within my family. I think for me, fatherhood and being a dad is just like it's a growing thing. Like you got to consistently try to grow in it and develop in it. So for me, it's just not static, right? It's just it's continuing to try to figure out best practices, continue to try to figure out how you can um, build a more effective relationship. For me, building a more effective relationship with my son as he continues to grow older, because now he jumping into middle school years is a completely different experience, right? So
It
it's just
is.
keep on continuing trying to figure out how to grow in fatherhood, right? Because I'm this is my first time doing it, and so I'm just trying to learn as much as I can.
So when you think about, and I want to go to like Black fathers, like one of the things that we see a lot, and I'll just talk about social media, and I don't know if this happens to you too, being a father, but social media conversations that people have, when the topic of discipline comes up, a lot of times in our community, it automatically goes to like tough love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you know, raising our children not to be weak, or because we know that, you know, children of color face adversity, being harder on them or raising them through the eyes of lack, or, you know, raising them to not necessarily to struggle, but to teach them that. And like, have you ever experienced that yourself, or have you ever struggled with that?
Yeah, yeah, right. Because you know, like especially, you know, I have a whole black son, right? Like a black boy, right? So you know, we see the images, we see the different things that black boys have to deal with specifically, right? And so we sometimes get caught up in that. And also being a black man raised in Forestville, black boy raised in Forestville, there's certain things that I had to watch out for, and there's certain things that my father, you know, schooled me to, certain things that my brothers, you know, certain things, experiences that we got schooled to because we lived in a certain environment. And so growing up, you know, my son's childhood is so much different than mine. I mean, like, you know, my brother Powerful has a line in one of his songs, and he said, "Crack was being sold in every street I ever lived in," right? And so that's the way we grew up, right? And so, but my son, no, he has like a front yard, a backyard. You know what I mean? He got his own room, bunk bed. He got two beds, like so. He got a completely different experience. And so, being a dad for him is a completely different experience of being a dad, of being raised in the community that I've been raised in. So what I had to do was I had to kind of I guess, switch, and not parent out of my own my own fears and my own ideas about how I grew up, and allow him to live in abundance, right? For him to be able to be raised in a way in which is ultimately we're trying to get back to a degree of normalcy, right? So I'm very, I guess, aware of at times, and you know, how I can parent out of oppression, right? Like the things that I'm trying to keep him safe from, rather than raising him in a way that allows him to live in abundance and to be free, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just very critical things, like you know, allowing him just recently we allowed, my wife and I allow him to go to California with his
Mm-hmm.
jujitsu team. Right now he's 11, all the
Mm-hmm.
way 11 years old, right? He a little guy, but he really enjoys jujitsu. He has this amazing peer group um, that he rocks with. And so for me, immediately it's like, yo, California, like, yo, no, you 11, da 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 da. But you know, the people that he trains with every day, his teachers, they didn't give me any. All they have ever given me is positive vibes. So I had to get out of my own fear, like, yo, what's gonna happen to my son, to allow him to experience life and the freedoms of the things that he ultimately wants to do. Right. So that's just one example of
Okay.
what it
One of the
looks like.
things that you mentioned, and as somebody gave a heart on, was you were talking about parenting out of fear, and, you know, teaching your child abundance. And this comes up a lot, and I get sometimes a lot of pushback from parents because one, and I'll even say, even when I've done groups with dads, um, one of the things that Black men have historically not been allowed to feel are feelings, are their emotions. And so, you know, a lot of times when I'm talking to men, either everything is good or I'm fine, you know. And so, like, this emotion of fear, like, men aren't supposed to be scared, or, you know, or Black men aren't allowed to be scared. You know, that is something that's not often given to you all. And so just hearing you acknowledge that, you know, I'm choosing not to parent him out of fear. What was that journey like for you to even acknowledge that that was a stance that you were coming from?
Yeah, I think I'm still on that journey, one, right? um, but I think one of those, right, is just to be able to acknowledge my range of emotions, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something that most men, especially men who were raised in oppressive situations, are not allowed to do. And that's something that I had to do my own work, right, in therapy sessions, and try to figure out how I'm able to feel my range of emotions and be comfortable with it, and understand that it's not a weakness, right? It's actually strength to be able to recognize all these specific things and be able to be honest with my son about what emotions I'm feeling, right? So when he was going to California, I sat and had a conversation with him like, yo, God, I am nervous. I am fearful of you traveling to these different places, right? I want to make sure you're good. I want to make sure that I've given you all the tools that you need to be successful, right? I'm second guessing myself, right? All these different things, but also share with him the emotions like, I know you're great, right? I know you're powerful. I know that you'll be able to tell me if something was bothering you, you'll be able to, have an honest conversation with me, right? So speaking life into him. But I think the work as a dad, as a father, ultimately is the work that I'm doing with myself, right? So I can't necessarily, a lot of people say, oh, you do as I say. I don't fully, I don't fully ride with that. I think that young people, and especially our children, are watching us, right? They are paying close attention to how we are emoting, how we are reacting in tense situations. So one of the things that I do, I just try to, be an example of what growth looks like. So I'm very honest, like, yo, God, when I make a mistake, I apologize, King. Like I said something to him the other day. My wife and I have been, when you talk about parenting out of fear, like we've transitioned out of this since he was probably, like, it's been years now, of corporal punishment, like beating, right? Like, right. And so my wife and I had like real conversations, like, look, we ain't gonna do this. No, we ain't gonna, because we never was real heavy in it, but we stopped. But I'm still trying to stop the threatening, right? The fear of, like, you don't do this, I'm a whoop, like, you know what I mean? Like, no, I'm not. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I gotta be able to understand, like, that too is fear. That too is like implanting that fear in him. And I don't want that. I want him to be able to recognize and make, positive decisions based on right and wrong, you know?
So another thing that you said was your fatherhood journey has been really a reflection of your own personal growth. And how did you come to that realization too, or really like the necessity for your parenting to improve, you as a person had to improve, right? So like I heard that, I'm just reading some of the comments. One of the people said, I think Katrina said, sometimes society makes us parent out of fear. So one question is, how do you balance that? Because and I'll just speak as a mom of a Black male child. The conversations that I have with him have been very different, especially since he's a teenager now, than I know some of my white friends. They've never had some of the conversations that I've had with Donald, with their children, right? And I know that is a fear base, and I know that society sometimes puts that on us. And I think sometimes, as a protective mechanism, or even with the best intention, we think that this parenting out of fear serves as a protection versus, as a handicap. And someone else mentioned that too, that parenting out of fear really can serve as a handicap. And so how did you find that you were able to find that balance, and then two, come to the realization that your fatherhood was only going to be as good as your personhood?
Balance, I'm still trying to figure that out. Like, I'm gonna keep it a million. Like, I always say, like, I'm trying to figure it out. Like, I don't know. I guess the true measure of whether or not there's true balance is when he becomes an adult. Is he able to take care of himself, right? Is he able to take care of himself and his family and have very good, morals and values as he continues into adulthood, right? So I hope I'm doing all right, right? Like, so that's one of those things, like, you just like, roll the dice, right? You just, but what I try to do is I just try to recognize, I question, being an educator too has kind of helped me, right? Because being an educator, one of the things that you have to do after every lesson is reflect, right? You got to think about, how did the lesson go? What did you do wrong? How did young people respond? And so when I'm talking to my son, if I have to tell him something that's difficult, or if I have to give him a celebration, I'm looking at his facial expressions. I'm looking at how he responds. I'm looking at how he reacts afterwards, right? So I'm examining all of these different things to determine how I should respond next time, right? If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And as it relates to me recognizing me fixing myself, I have me working on myself in order to be a better father. I always thought that that's with everything. That's being a dad, that's being a brother, that's being a husband, right? Like I can't be my relationship with other people is based on me mastering myself, right? Me
Mm-hmm.
truly trying to improve myself every single day, and I'm serious about that. And so I ultimately think that makes us better people, which ultimately can help us in our interactions with other people. And my son is one of the people that I spend the most time with. So if I'm mastering myself, mastering my emotions, being able to talk about it and discuss it, he will feel the liberty to do the same, because our dads are our superheroes, right? Like my dad to this day is still my superhero. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yo, whatever you need, whatever you say, I'm
Mm-hmm.
taking into consideration, you know, because he's my father. You know what I mean? And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I'm that for King as well. So
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Good. All right. So I have another question, and then I'll come to two questions in the comments. One of the things that you mentioned when you were talking about him going to California was you were very transparent with him about how that made you feel. And so what has that journey been like, or as a father, or as a black man too, sharing that wide range of emotions with your son, and allowing him, because when you were talking about, children pick up what we model, by you sharing your emotions, you're giving him the platform to then share his emotions too. What has that journey been like for you all versus, do as I say, not as I do, or sit down and be quiet, versus that more punitive sometimes approach that parents sometimes take.
Like it's tough. It's tough. Especially the wide range of them. Like, and I know it's
Mm-hmm.
about to get even worse because it's middle school. It's tough. So, perfect example. We were in uh Target yesterday. He had his fifth grade promotion, and my son
Mm-hmm.
hate dressing up. I can't stand dressing up either, right? It's like a whole family. My wife don't like it. Nobody like it, right? We can't stand it. But he had to dress up every day. He wears sweatpants. He put on like shoes with no laces. He don't care. Like he just live his
Mm-hmm.
life free, right? So we like, yo, you gotta dress up. It's your fifth grade promotion. You gotta put some clothes on. So we went to the store. He mad the whole time. Like, man, I'm beefing. I don't want to put on no pink shirt. Nah, I'm good. Like I don't want to put on no blue khakis and this little overcoat. You know what I'm saying? I'm good. Like I don't want it. I don't want to do it. So in the middle of Target, me and my wife is dealing with his emotions, right? And so we don't want to go super hard on him. Like you gonna do, yeah, it don't matter. You wearing it, right? So what I did was I was like, look, I know, I understand that you don't really rock with the dress clothes. I don't need it, right? So in that moment, I'm like, yo, I'm gonna show you my emotion. I don't really like it either, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we got to do this because there's certain situations where we have to, dress up and we got to put on certain clothes in order to present ourselves in a certain way. And that's just what it
Mm-hmm.
is. Now, you can have the emotion, you can be upset, you can feel all the things you want to feel, but at the end of the day, we gotta do what we gotta do. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think for him, it's that lesson of sometimes, and especially as a man, as you get older and as you develop into a man, there's certain things you ain't gonna like, but you gotta
Mm-hmm.
do, right? You gotta get up every morning. You gotta, you know what I mean? You gotta get to work. You gotta take care of your family. Sometimes you don't want to do certain things because you would much rather do these other things, but we gotta do what we gotta do. So I try to share the emotion and not
Mm-hmm.
just say, boy, I don't care if you mad, da 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 da, put on these clothes, look nice, da da da. But I'm like, nah, I ain't gonna put that on you. I'm gonna let you know exactly. I'm gonna validate what you feel. But at the end of the day, we gotta do what we gotta do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough, and especially when he's sad, when he be crying a
Right.
lot, like that joke tough, right? Because you
Why
try
is
to
it tough?
figure out, because you try to
Mm-hmm.
balance like em- that's that black man about to come out. That whole oppression, right? It's coming out, right? Because you we can't just break down, right? We can't afford we and this is I'm struggling, right? Because we
Mm-hmm.
can't necessarily afford to just fall to pieces when times get tough. Like
Mm-hmm.
we can't, because we behind enemy lines. Like we have to figure out ways to manage our emotions in times in which we need to manage them, and then push forward. And then
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe come back and process and deal with our emotions. But there's certain times where I can't allow myself to break down. I gotta go. I gotta go. Now at 11, that's that. You're still a child, right? So you're still trying to
Right.
figure the world out. So I'm trying to teach him that, yeah, manhood is I can't break down at every moment I feel something, right? And when times get tough, but at the same time, I want you to recognize your emotions. So it's that real fine balance. And certain people can do certain things and be able to get away with it and maneuver and move, right? As you know, as we know, a very popular thing in social media is like white tears, right? They could be like, I can feel this and that. Black men, like there's a certain level of, and I might be wrong, right? But there's a certain level of armor needed to survive in this country, right? And I heard somebody talking about the police earlier, or on the comments. I saw somebody talking about the comments about the police earlier. And so you gotta be real genius to survive in this country as a black man. You gotta be sharp, right? And that's an ever growing thing that I'm trying to teach King. And I don't have the total answers. I don't have all the answers.
So how do you balance that with, because I'm looking at Maurice's comment, we don't have the luxury to show weakness. And for me, when it comes to parenting, one of the biggest things that I have done in my own parenting and also in working with parents is change that line weakness to innocence, right? It's almost as if sometimes we don't have the luxury to show our innocence, which is really childhood. Like if you look at the research, if you talk to people, one of the things that the research shows is that, Black children age faster, right? We're put into more adult situations sooner. And a lot of times it takes, if we're not careful, it can literally chip away at your innocence of being a child, right? Like, so when you're 5, when you're 7, when you're 11, I have, because of the environment, like you said, the society that we may live in, I'm facing almost adult expectations on you when you don't even have the brain power to figure it out. And you're walking into the teenage years, and your emotions are literally all over the place. So how do you balance that, that understanding of, I have to teach him this in order for him to survive, and yet I still want him to be an 11-year-old child.
Yeah, I think I try to teach King that by helping him understand that the historical legacies of this country, right? Like help him to fully grasp what's happening, right? Like so he has to. I have very full conversation with him about our identities in this country and what we must do in order to survive. Yeah, it's heavy as an 11-year-old. But that's the world we live in, right? And so the balance is based in, for me, is educating him about his environment. And two, one of the biggest things that I did was that me and my wife did was choose to name him King Victorious Jihad, right? So like even in those moments where one might say weakness, I hear you saying innocence, or those moments where you're tested by oppression, right? I want to continue to remind you that you're a king, right? I want to continue to remind you that you're victorious, right? I want to continue to remind you that you have an internal fight, right? That you have to be successful in, right? So I think that it's constant. The balance comes with understanding the context of our existence and our identities in this country, while at the same time teaching him and showing him how to enjoy life, right? So there's there's a lot of things that I do to make sure that I maintain a healthy state of mind, right? Therapy is one of them. Riding my bike is another one. Playing sports is another one, right? Like taking vacations, right? All of these different things. I want to show him laughing, right? When I wake up in the morning, giving him a hug and a kiss, right? Saying his name when he enters into a room, right? Sharing jokes with him. These, it's certain things that I want to make sure that he's also enjoying life, but I also want him to recognize that he has a responsibility and a duty to serve others, right? Because he does have a very different lifestyle than a lot of other people that is around him. And so I want him to not necessarily take that for granted, but to use what he has to help those as well, if that makes sense.
Okay. Okay. I want to go to two other comments between Maurice and Misha. So Misha asked, is showing emotion a sign of weakness? Have you been raised to think that? Like, because I know that some, and I'll just speak from experience, both personal and professional. I know that some children get disciplined when they show emotion, right? You're upset. I get to be angry as the parent, or little boys fall and hurt themselves. Get up, walk it off, right? What you crying for? Stop acting like a little girl. Those are very, very common sayings, and they're used as disciplinary strategies to make you tough or to make you man up. Like we hear people telling 1 and 2-year-olds to man up. And so, in your experience as a father, how have emotions played into your disciplinary practices and giving him the space, or is that something that you've struggled with, giving him the space to really feel this full range of emotions?
Yeah, I'm getting a lot better at it now. I mean, a lot better. I was not the best as, initially. But I think that I'm getting a lot better in being able to recognizing my own emotions. Like I still be having to pull out the emotion chart, like looking at the faces, like what do I feel right now?
What
right?
am
Like
I feeling today?
yeah,
Right.
because all I had was all I knew was mad, happy, sad, right? Like I didn't know my range of emotions. And I think that we're men, and I think we will be lying to ourselves, especially Black folk, if we start to say that we are not teaching Black, as a majority, we're not teaching Black men not to show emotions, right? Like that is like a major, major sickness that we have to figure out how to maneuver through, that that I deal with as well, right? Like, but this my wife is a major help. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. My wife, but I think that we help each other, right? Like, so if might say something, like might be in the middle of a situation, and my wife be like, "Come on back to the room," right? And we might have a conversation, and I might have to come out and reroute my conversation with King, right? Because ultimately, we got to check each other. We got to be able to, because it might be things that she sees that I don't, and there's times when I'm able to see things that she doesn't. So she's like probably a major, not probably, she's a major balance creator as it relates to allowing King to show emotion. And I'm ultimately one when it's time to step in, like, nah, we good. Like we good. He got that emotion, but this is about to get done because we're not talking about this no more. Like this is about to get done because he's also a child, right? And children try to maneuver and try to figure out ways that they can take advantage of certain situations. And I think part of my responsibility is also recognizing when it's BS. And I'm like, all right, boom, all right, yeah, you can feel it, but we about to get this done. You know what I'm saying?
So how, as a father and as a Black father, how do you find your support, or what does fatherhood look like in your circles? And how, a lot of times
I want to talk about this. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does fatherhood look like in your circles?
I got kings in my circle. So I'm fathers, like solid. I got so people be talking about deadbeat dad. My circle is strong. So I literally can go to any one of my best friends, any one of my folks, and look at them. Like I look at all of them. I look at my oldest brother Ace. I look at my man Black. I look at Truth. I look at my man M. who just had a baby. Me and my man Los talk about parenting all the time. Like my circle is strong. So when I talk about like Black men raising their babies, and I'm talking about like we all the weight in it. Like, so I don't know what stereotypes, who have like we out here. I got some spaghetti on the stove right now. Like we, you know what I'm saying? All the way 100%. So my circle is tight. Like we don't do, but I ain't got no suckers in my circle. So I don't, so that's, so because that's all I know. And my father's a G. My father was like, had a rack of kids, a rack of us. If you don't know, we drive deep. You know what I'm saying? We dive deep. But my father was also had a station wagon. When you talk about the example and what we saw, right? My father had a station wagon. We would play football. My father would, in District Heights, would grab the young kids who didn't have their fathers in their life, put them all in a station wagon, sign them up for football with a check that would bounce probably by like week 2, and take everybody to practice. By the time the check bounced, everybody had their equipment. We was playing football, and he would literally take the whole neighborhood to practice and bring the whole neighborhood back. So I don't know. Now, of course, my father ain't perfect. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know men who just, nah, I don't take care of my kid. Like, nah, I'm gone. Like, nah, we don't. So there's no other way. We take care of our babies, you know, the best we know how, the best we can. We strong, you know. Kurt, my man Kurt, you know what I mean? My man Kurt, it's like we started Fatherhood Forum, like celebrating Black fathers all in the county, right? So it's so many just powerful examples. But we also, I'm sorry, because I can go on a tangent about this, because I'm very serious about how what we allow ourselves to see and say about each other. I'm very serious about that. So, you know, you won't, my son, I don't watch no television. I don't try to take those images in about who we are. I try to create the reality that I want to live. Right. And my circle is strong.
So that it's almost like that data versus narrative, right? Like the narrative may be one thing, but the data shows having that narrative and data match up, right? And so what would you say to, because the example that you gave of your father is awesome, but what about those kids, you know, that were children with you that he was taking care of, that after practice went home and didn't have a father there, so they're figuring this thing out as they go along? A lot of times with parenting, you know, the beautiful thing about parenting is that it gives you a chance to decide, hopefully, what things you're going to continue, what things you're going to stop, and what things you're going to create. And so what advice, or what words of wisdom would you give to men who are figuring this thing out and they don't have that foundational piece to pull from? You know, a lot of people, especially with these babies, Bill Cosby was the father figure. The Cosby Show, Heathcliff Huxtable was the father figure. You know, so how do you navigate that too?
I think one of the biggest ways that you can navigate it is, I think, recreating your own story, right? Like being able to create your own realities is huge, right? Like what images and what ideas are you taking in, right? Because, and who are you surrounding yourself with? And what are you allowing okay, let me say this. If you're a Black person, specifically a Black man living in the United States of America, I think that it is extremely important that you go to therapy. I won't say that. That's number one.
Because I'm gonna put a heart. Everybody should be putting hearts right now. Yes.
Because you know what I'm saying? We don't understand how much trauma we've been through. Like we don't understand. We don't get it. We don't get it until we start getting it out. Until it start coming out of us, and then we like, oh, okay. Oh, this is happening. This is going on, right? I know, men. So this is 2019. Many of us, people my age or a little bit older than me, fathers grew up during the crack era, right? Like 100, right? That was targeting Black men. So many of our uncles and many of our fathers have been directly connected to these things that were happening in the streets in the 70s and the 80s, right? Like, and so many, and the early 90s. So many of our dads and many of our uncles, many of, you know, were experiencing these things, right? And so a lot of times I think young men who are trying to figure this out on their own, there's a lot of different circles. There's a lot of different circles that they can jump into. Like there's a lot of different, my man Black is starting to work with Man Uplifting. He's starting a circle. Me and my man Kurt has a Fatherhood Forum. There's a lot of different things that you can get into that are not necessarily quote unquote typical of what men typically do, right? Spaces where we can share and lean on one another for support. But I feel like we're there. We just got to allow ourselves to be vulnerable enough to help one another, right? And also to give space to forgive. Because I think that's
Right.
part one of healing, right? It's being able to forgive, whether it be our dads, whether it be any, man or woman in our lives who calls us these things, and be able to push forward so that we can be better for our children. You know what I mean?
And I think too, and we'll get ready to wrap up, and I see one more comment, but that all becomes a part of discipline, right? When you allow your child to feel, and I see Maurice and Misha still talking too, that conversation about the full range of emotions. When you allow your child to experience that full range of emotions, to be their authentic self without fear, right? A lot of times with that parenting without fear is, if I allow you to be authentic, especially within our community, it can get you killed, it can get you hurt, it can get you ridiculed, it can get you rejected, or it can have a bad connotation against me as your parent, right? Like I am less than as a parent if my child behaves this way or responds this way or does this thing. And allowing that to be put to the side, to allow our children to one, to be themselves and create their own identity, but then also, like you said, to understand that the narrative that a lot of times this society feeds them is not necessarily accurate of what is actually out there. You were mentioning Black fatherhoods. I know Matt Pressberry is big on like the Black fatherhood, and Facebook, and just how I think we're at a beautiful time where people, especially people of color, Black men and Black women, are recognizing the need for our own healing. And like you said, and our need to forgive ourselves, our parents, this person, that person. So we're not carrying this and raising our children out of not only just fear, but also out of anger and out of rejection or our own insecurities too.
Yeah. So,
no,
so I was thinking about this kind of other day, right? And I think it goes like hand in hand with this idea of like parenting. Oftentimes, I feel like we are sometimes battling. We sometimes battle in our own oppression. We're not necessarily figuring out or recognizing the foundations for even being a Black parent in America, right? So our parenting system, this parenting system in the context of the lifespan of humanity, right? This is extremely new, right? Like we are pretty much like completely new. We are a completely new identity group when you look at the span of human existence. Like African Americans in this country grew up very close to the people who are oppressed us. We're given a variety of different messages and ideas about who and what we were, how we were to parent. Even when we were parenting and building families, we were consistently being attacked, and we consistently still are being attacked and traumatized by oppressive forces, whether it be police, whether it be unfair housing, whether it be degraded communities, whatever it is, we're always under attack, right? So what I think is extremely important is us recognizing, one, the foundation and the fabric of the identities of the African American family, right? In order to ultimately build a strong foundation of what a family looks like. This is weird, and this is kind of where my brain be going, right? Like I looked at a picture, me, my wife, and my son took a picture at his promotional ceremony today. And I looked at it and I started to tear up. I was like, good. Like, how I think that is the most gangster, excuse my language, the most gangster shit you can do. You can try to do in this country is ultimately to raise and develop a powerful Black family, because it's always under attack. Right? It's under attack when you turn on the TV. When you go outside, it's under attack by the police. It's under attack by the judicial system. It's under attack. Yeah, like everywhere. So when we think about how we can raise and develop it, I think we all have to figure out what forces are at play, recognize what a love is, create that hub of existence and that sense of community all around us, right? And ultimately, we are creating a pretty much a force field of love where we could be able to share emotions, where we can be able to forgive each other, where we can be able to push each other a little harder. We can be able to give our children spaces where they can be free, right? That's why I'm a huge advocate of Prince George's County. I'm like, we can get this right. You know what I'm saying? We can get this right. We can get, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm cool with my son having this reality. I'm cool with it. You know what I mean? And I don't think that we have to like prepare him for another existence. We can create the realities that we want. You know what I mean? I feel like I just went all over the place, but I just feel like being a father, being a Black dad is ultimately recognizing oppression and also recognizing that we can also be free. Right. And it's fighting for it consistently, you know? And it's also making mistakes, right? Because I'm a human. Because I make a whole rack. That's why I posted this. I'm like, bro, I'll be making mistakes like a mug, like all the time. But I try to work on it and try to fix it the best way I know how.
And that's one of the beautiful parts of discipline that I think are, you know, important as it relates to discipline, because, you know, the purpose of discipline is to teach, right? I say that all the time. It's not to shame. It's not to, you know, force somebody into something. It's not to overpower. The purpose of discipline is to teach, because as parents, my goal is to instill things in you that are able to keep you and carry you when I'm no longer here, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want you as a parent, I don't want my children to have grown up in fear so that when they become adults, they live their lives in fear, right? And so when we think about discipline, it's not just I'm correcting you when you're doing something wrong. It's I'm praising you and I'm catching you and I'm speaking life into you when you're doing something right or when you're just existing, right? Or, you know, and so I'm teaching you how to behave and how to view yourself, and that behavior and that viewing of self will hopefully keep you out of certain situations that you may have gotten into had you not known yourself better, right? Or had you acted out of fear, because fear creates anger, fear creates anxiety, you know, fear creates, you know, acting first, acting later, you know, and so that whole thing about discipline, and especially about dads and discipline and what you talked about, it's just been so beautiful to hear, because you're doing it, you know, just by being an example. We're almost at time. This 50 minutes, we went 50 minutes, this has gone by really, really fast. So just in your closing, when you think about what we've talked about tonight and just your role as a father, can you give us like 3 things to take away from what you've talked about as it relates to you as a father and discipline, or what fathers need? What can fathers start to utilize to build their own toolkit as they work with their children and do this fatherhood thing?
Wow, I feel like you just asked me that. Like I'm like an expert, like 3 things. I'll think of the stuff that I have this sign above my office at school, and it says, "Rules without relationships breeds rebellion." And pretty much with that, like the relationships that we have, like I can't teach you anything if I don't have a relationship with you. And so as a father, if we're consistently screaming, if all we're doing is correcting, if all we're doing is down their throat, it's going to be very hard for them to take a look and examine their lives and pretty much how they might want to adjust it, right? You taught me something that was extremely powerful, and I've been using it since you taught me around this idea of like being able to, and this probably, I'm gonna say this is rude, this is number 2, right? Being able to give consequences and be loving all at the same time, right? Like you can give a very stern consequence while at the same time giving you a hug. Like I can, say you're on punishment, and still be kind, right? So being able to separate consequences and anger
from the person, that behavior from the person,
being able to separate that. And one of the things that I'm working on is to be in it with your child, like be in with what they're doing. And with their lives and experiences. And to be honest with you, that's one of the things. Like my son is like into Pokemon. He's into video games. He's into jujitsu real heavy. I'm not into Pokemon. I'm not into video games. You know what I'm saying? And so I try to figure out ways to help, like, be authentically honest, because I don't believe in lying to him. Like, yo, I don't really, this not my lane. But at the same time, be interested and invested in what he's doing. And so I think being a parent is part of that, like being able to give up some of yourself. Oh, and I got one more too.
Okay, so we're gonna go for a bonus. So 3 and a bonus.
Yeah,
let me go back and say, I love that. Rules without relationships leads to rebellion. So many times we think that relationships come after, after I've laid down the law, and people think, oh, my child will tell me things. No, you're teaching your child not to come to you at all.
Yeah.
Because you haven't built that relationship. If I'm teaching you at 4 that you can't have emotions or you can't feel, when you're 16, you're not going to come to me when something happens to you.
When somebody offered me.
No, I'm sorry.
I done forgot my 4th one. I was in that emotion.
Oh no!
No, it's all good. But I forgot it. It was on. It was
we
on.
got to be in the moment with people. We got rules of our relationships lead to rebellion. You can discipline and still be kind. You can be in the moment with your children. You can enter into their world. So many times, we forget that our children's day is really based on our schedule. So I love that, you can enter into their world. So if that bonus one comes back.
I remember. And and also discipline changes your life as well. So like, this is my wife and I, like, we, like when we have to give King consequences, it also changes our lives, right? So if we're not eating out, we not eating out. If, you know what I'm saying? If we not doing this, then we all, you know what I mean? We have to be able to adjust our experiences, because we made the decision to bring him into the world. So that also means that it might have some adjustments on our lives as well. And we got to be comfortable with that as parents and as fathers, right? And I saw my mom was on here. I got to make sure I address my mom. She said something like, she was like, did your mom have any
influence? Right.
Yes, Mom. Yes. You have major influence on my life. I love you to death. I was just talking about fathers today. But of course, Mom, I love you with all my heart. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Victorious, for joining me. Thank you for being my inaugural guest to Dr. Tara Tuesdays. You dropped so many jewels, and thank you for your transparency about yourself and your journey. I'm sure that you have blessed so many other people who are watching this. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for everybody who tuned in. This is Dr. Tara. Always remember, let's heal together. Peace.
Peace. I don't really know how to end this thing.